Oasis Loss Modelling Framework is essentially a translation tool between the science around natural catastrophes to business users and society. And what that means is that we have to find a way of taking the intensity of storms, for example, or the height of floodwaters and the speed that they move, and the impact that that has on buildings or on crops or on forests, and translating that into a loss, in a euro amount or whatever currency you want to produce, from which businesses and people can make decisions. But the reason why translation is necessary is that the format and the information that the scientific community has isn't usable in any shape or form really very easily by the man or woman in the street. So what we want to do is take that science, use a standardized process to get it into software from which you can ask questions about what is my 100-year loss going to look like, what type of events are going to happen, and how can we show these on a map to try and understand about how the world we're facing today is going to change. So Oasis Loss Modelling Framework, first of all, it's a software platform. So that means it has a number of different components that perform some functions that are important to get this knowledge into something usable. And essentially the key elements are what we call a hazard module. So the hazard module is the part that takes account of windstorm or flood or earthquake or landslide, or i.e. the hazards that we want to understand better. It has a vulnerability component. So that is the bit that takes the built environment or crops or forestry, and the two things together are what produce some element of loss, and that's essentially what the risk is. And to make that work, you also need a couple of other things. So there's a big simulation engine in there. So that's the bit that statistically takes those two components of hazard and vulnerability and turns them into some information that can answer questions like, for example, what should I expect as a loss every 200 years or 100 years or every year? And those, of course, are components of the information that we need to make decisions in society. So for scientists who want to use Oasis Loss Modelling Framework, they have a model in a certain format, we have a platform that requires certain information, and we have a tool called MDK, Model Development Toolkit. And the tool will move the model from that format into our format, and that's how you get the model into Oasis. For users, if they want to use Oasis, there are a variety of ways you can do that. So first of all, everybody can download the software. Well, there are hundreds of models available that you can pick. Some are free, some are commercial, and you pick the one you want, you pay if you have to pay, and then you have to deploy that model in the environment that you wish. You then have to have one more piece of information, which is what we call exposure information. So this is usually the built environment. For an insurance company, this could be their buildings, or it could be a city, or it could be crops or forestry. You then have to pass that information into the model. The model then uses that to calculate the loss, and then it's available in the loss reporting engine, which then gives you that information in tables or in maps, whatever you prefer.
The Oasis Loss Modelling Framework is a very interesting development because it is based on very clearly described standards. So all the different models that are implemented according to the Loss Modelling Framework standard can directly interoperate. And this is something that makes it really easy to exchange different models, to exchange or plug models into existing workflows and exchange different parts and have a look at different outcomes. So this is something that makes collaboration and exchange in this context much easier.
Standards in the end are quite important, and what you see in academia and in many projects funded at the moment, also at the European level, at the national level, is that there are not many standards, and we are modeling huge amounts of data and publish with it, and often comparing different time slices, different data sets and so on. And the loss modeling framework provides these standards and also pushes us to follow these standards. And the nice result in the end is that we know in advance that we produce something what is useful for the end users because we follow these standards.
It's like the club, right? So it's in the middle of the whole project. It's a home, a community where you can address your model issues, get advice, and find a solution. So I would say it would be piecemeal. There would be pieces without OASIS. OASIS has set standards for the model. It has set a technological basis for modeling with these models and made all of this available open source. And this is pretty revolutionary.